Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something fundamental, something right at the core of, well, everything, the nature of the self.
That's
We're
right.
doing an in-depth analysis, a real deep dive into the ideas from The Foundations of Angel Wing, volume #1. It's a technical research book, and it presents this, frankly, stunning idea that the I we all walk around with isn't fixed.
Mm-hmm. It's quite a profound body of work to explore. And, before we even start, it feels absolutely essential to pause and give thanks.
Absolutely.
This material wouldn't be here without some incredible intellectual effort. So a huge thank you to Dr. Chaitanya Kripalu, who's the founder and CEO of the Angel Wing, LLC.
Yes.
Also to Dr. Elizabeth Berman. She's a key member of the Angel Wing Mastermind Group and a really dedicated presenter of these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Sachin Karnik. He's the researcher who did all that crucial background work for this first volume. Their collective insights really form the backbone of our whole discussion today.
Definitely. And their work really forces us to question the most basic thing we assume, right? That we're this stable, continuous person.
Right.
Our mission today really is to unpack the core thesis
Hmm.
that this I is, well, a dynamic thing, a psychological construct, not some unchanging soul or ID card.
And the book kicks off with this incredibly potent sentence. It basically sums it all up. That which you call I is a story told by memory, sustained by thought, and believed by habit.
Wow. Yeah, that just flips everything, doesn't it? If the self is a story, well, that means it can be changed, maybe even, I don't know, put down entirely.
Potentially, yes. It opens up possibilities.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. For listeners maybe just encountering this technical book, how do we actually define this constructed self? What is it formally?
Formally, the constructed self is defined as the narrative that the mind is constantly building and, importantly, revising.
Okay.
Its purpose is to keep up a sense of coherence, a feeling that things make sense, that there's a continuous me existing through time. Think of it like the mind's operating system.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, it takes all these scattered experiences, thoughts, feelings, and it weaves them into a recognizable story, a character arc, if you will.
Yeah.
But the key is it's a process, a dynamic thing, like you said, a verb, not a static noun. It's always working, always adjusting to keep that sense of continuity going.
Right, because life keeps changing. So
Yeah.
why is understanding this construction,
Yeah.
why is taking it apart, even conceptually, so important for someone listening? If it works, why mess with it?
That's a great question because while this constructed self is, necessary for just functioning in society, it's also the source of so many of our deepest limitations, our anxieties, our stuck points.
Uh-huh.
Understanding the mechanism is the shortcut, the direct path to dismantling what the book calls the illusions that obscure the authentic essence beneath. It's like mistaking the map for the actual territory.
Okay.
If you think the story is the storyteller, you're trapped by the limits of that story. Real freedom, genuine change, it starts when you recognize the construction itself.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, let's get into the architecture then. If the self is built, we need to see the blueprint. Where does it begin? The research starts right at birth, talking about newborns being in a state of undifferentiated awareness. What does that even look like? What is that?
Undifferentiated awareness. Well, it's a state where the infant literally doesn't perceive itself as separate from everything else.
Wow.
There's no distinct me looking out at a world.
Yeah.
Not yet. It's just sensation, presence, pure, spontaneous being. If the baby's hungry, it is hunger. If it's being held and feels safe, it is safety.
Right.
There's no subject-object split yet. It's a unified field. Inner and outer are just one thing.
That sounds almost mystical,
Yeah.
but it's developmental stage, and clearly we don't stay there. We can't. Right. To survive, you need to know you're you.
Exactly. We can't function like that. So
Yeah.
the process of socialization, just interacting with the world, necessarily starts building boundaries. This leads to the critical shift towards differentiation.
Differentiation.
And differentiation is driven mainly by interaction, usually with caregivers first. The baby cries, maybe gets picked up, maybe doesn't, needs are met or they aren't. And that flicker, that tiny gap between the need and the fulfillment starts creating the first sense of separation.
Like, I am here feeling this, and the comfort or the lack of it is coming from out there.
Precisely. The brain starts mapping these boundaries, building an initial, very primal sense of self based purely on physical sensation and interaction.
But then something kicks in that speeds this all up
Mm-hmm.
and maybe twists it a bit. The book points straight at language.
Ah, Language, yes.
Yeah.
It's a total game changer. And, like the book suggests, a bit of a double-edged sword. It's obviously vital for thinking, planning, communicating complex ideas.
Couldn't live without it.
Right. But it also provides the perfect tools for psychological separation. When a parent starts naming things, that's Mommy, here's your hand, you are Sarah, they are actively drawing what the book calls the symbolic boundary.
Okay, define that for us.
Okay.
The symbolic boundary.
The symbolic boundary is essentially the psychological line we draw between our inner world, the sense of me, and the outer world.
Got it.
And it's mostly built and reinforced through these labels, names, roles. Language turns raw experience into a conceptual identity. Before language, there's just being, experiencing. After language, there's Sarah, who is experiencing her world.
I see the necessity. Absolutely. You need that boundary to function, to know where you end and the chair begins. But the analysis says this boundary is also the origin of illusion. How? Why is it an illusion?
The illusion creeps in because our sense of identity gets stuck to the labels, to the boundaries themselves. Instead of identifying with the underlying awareness, the consciousness that noticed the boundaries being drawn, we start identifying with the definitions. We forget the awareness that was there first, and we start believing we are the label, we are Sarah, or the smart one, or the anxious one. We mistake the container for the water inside.
And that process, that conceptualizing, leads right into forming the ego self. As the child grows, encounters school, family rules, culture, that initial spontaneity has to get reined in, right? Social conformity.
Exactly. That's social pressure, the need to fit in, to be accepted. It forces a kind of fragmentation. The ego self, as the book defines it, is the resulting image. It's the picture of who I have to be to belong and survive in this world.
So it's a composite sketch.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an aggregation of behaviors that get rewarded, responses learned through trial and error, defenses built up to avoid pain or rejection within whatever social system you're in, family, school, playground.
Now, a lot of spiritual or even some psychological paths paint the ego as, like, the bad guy, the enemy to be defeated. But this research offers something more nuanced. It calls the ego an adaptive structure. Why is that distinction important?
It's hugely important because it shifts the whole frame. It's not a moral failing, it's a functional necessity, at least initially. An adaptive structure is just a psychological mechanism that helps us navigate, helps us deal with complex relationships, social rules, planning.
So it's useful.
Very useful. It helps us delay gratification, manage how we appear in public, learn from mistakes. You know, without some kind of ego structure, we'd be completely overwhelmed by the complexity of human society. It's like an early learning program designed to keep us safe and get our needs met.
Okay, so it's a tool, a necessary one. When does this adaptation go wrong? Where's the critical mistake, as the book puts it?
The mistake happens when the adaptation solidifies and becomes identity. When the mask we wear for interaction gets mistaken for our actual face. And this usually happens totally unconsciously. Let's say a child learns that being a helper gets them praise. That helping behavior, which was an adaptation, slowly shifts from something they do to something they are. I am a helpful person.
And then they have to keep being helpful, even when it doesn't feel right.
Exactly. They start clinging to that self-image, the helper, the achiever, the funny one, whatever it is, so tightly that they lose the flexibility to be anything else, to change, to fail, to just be.
And that clinging, that's what turns the useful tool into a kind of psychological cage. So the ego isn't bad, but confusing the function with your essence, that's the trap.
Precisely. That's the core of the illusion we need to see through.
Okay, so if that's how it's built, how is this constructed self maintained over a lifetime? The book points to memory. Memory as the glue.
Yes, memory is absolutely fundamental. It provides the sense of continuity over time.
Makes sense. I mean, I'm the same person who went to college 10 years ago because I remember it. My memories link the past me to the present me. That creates consistency, right?
It creates the feeling of consistency. But here's where the research really pushes back against our everyday intuition. It argues that memory isn't like pulling up a stable file from a computer drive. It's much more like a fluid narrative.
Wait, fluid? That sounds unsettling. If my memories aren't fixed, if they're fluid, what does that mean? How can I trust my own past? How do we know who we are if the story keeps changing?
It is unsettling at first glance. But this is grounded in solid psychological research on how recollection actually works. We don't just retrieve a memory intact, we reconstruct it. Every single time we recall something,
You rebuild it.
we rebuild it. And that reconstruction process is heavily swayed by Well, by our current mood, our current beliefs, and crucially, by the story of the constructed self we're trying to maintain right now.
Wow. Okay, can you give an example? How
Yeah.
does that reconstruction work day to day?
Sure. Think about an argument you had last year. When you recall it now, you're not accessing a perfect recording. You're actively putting the pieces back together, and your mind might make errors like source monitoring errors. Maybe you misremember who said what, or you blend details from different arguments. Or, more subtly, if your current self-story is, I always try my best, but people misunderstand me, your reconstruction of that argument will likely highlight the parts where you felt misunderstood and downplay the parts where maybe you weren't listening so well. It edits the memory to fit the current narrative.
So, my personal history isn't really history. It's more like
Yeah.
an ongoing interpretation,
hmm
a constantly edited movie script designed to make the main character me look consistent.
That's a great way to put it. It's an evolving fiction aimed purely at maintaining internal coherence. We're unconsciously tweaking the past to justify the self-image we hold in the present.
Okay, and this process uses something called the self-concept.
Yes. Let's define that.
Please.
The self-concept, or you could call it the mental schema, is the mind's internal model of itself. It's the integrated framework of all the beliefs, the values, the generalizations about who I am. It's like the filter sitting over the lens of your perception.
A filter. And like any filter, it lets some things through and blocks others. The book says this schema provides order, but it also confines our perception. How does that work? How does it limit us?
Well, when we really strongly identify with the schema, with
Yeah.
this self-concept, everything gets filtered through it. Our mind uses tools like selective attention, focusing only on things that fit the story, and confirmation bias, actively looking for evidence that proves the story right.
So if my schema includes, I'm not good at public speaking,
Then your mind will probably zero in on that one time you stumbled over a word, confirming the belief. And it might completely ignore or minimize the times you spoke clearly and confidently. It filters out the contradictory data to keep the schema intact.
right, so a compliment might land and reinforce I'm worthy, but criticism. It doesn't just land as information. The schema grabs it and says, see, proof I'm inadequate. Or, this person's attacking me.
Exactly. That's the prison aspect. Every single interaction gets translated into the narrative's terms. How does this affect me? What does this say about me? Am I winning or losing according to my story? The focus shifts away from the actual event and onto the ego's constant scorekeeping.
So the walls of this prison aren't made of brick and mortar. They're made of words, beliefs, interpretations.
Yeah.
And we're the ones constantly reinforcing them by assigning meaning through that self-concept filter.
Perfectly stated. The structure is built entirely of interpretations.
And this internal construction, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? The book talks about how modern culture actually pours fuel on this fire.
Oh, absolutely. The problem of the constructed self gets massively amplified by our cultural context. Contemporary society often actively encourages and rewards this kind of identity fragmentation.
This sounds like the label trap you mentioned, where our identity gets boiled down to external things, our job, how much we produce, what we own, our social status.
Yes, precisely. We use professional titles, financial success, social roles, parent, spouse, athlete as the main shorthand for who someone is, for their inherent worth. I'm a VP, I'm a stay-at-home dad, I just ran a marathon. These labels, which are just temporary roles or achievements, get mistaken for the core definition of the person.
And underlying all of that is this often unspoken belief. My value, my meaning, comes from external validation, from outside approval.
Deeply ingrained. We're constantly looking outward for confirmation that we're okay, that we're worthy. And the modern world, especially with digital media, turns selfhood into what the book calls a performative project.
Performative project, like building a brand. This leads to the social persona, right?
Exactly. Let's define that. The social persona is that carefully curated image we project publicly, especially online or in professional contexts. It's the polished version, the highlight reel of the constructed self, designed specifically to attract positive feedback, approval, maybe even envy. It's self-branding. Ugh, that sounds exhausting. Just maintaining that curated image all the time. If all my energy goes into polishing the brand, what's left for, just being me? What's the psychological cost?
The cost is significant. The book highlights a paradox. The more effort we pour into building and managing this external persona, this brand, the more disconnected, more estranged we become from what the research calls the quiet, witnessing presence within. We start prioritizing the audience's reaction over our own authentic experience. And this constant performance, this gap between the inner reality and the outer show, leads to psychological fragmentation and anxiety.
Fragmentation, like being pulled in different directions.
Yeah.
How does that feel for someone experiencing it?
Well, fragmentation means the identity feels disjointed, split. It comes from trying to juggle conflicting demands, the internal feelings of maybe insecurity or doubt versus the external pressure to appear confident and successful.
Yeah, I can see that.
And because our sense of self-worth gets tied to these external things, job titles, relationship status, social media likes, which are inherently unstable, right? They can change any minute.
Exactly. So genuine stability becomes impossible. We lose that solid ground.
And we end up on that emotional roller coaster the book describes. Success brings that temporary high, that inflation of pride.
And any setback, any criticism brings the crash,
Yeah.
the deflation into shame or feeling inadequate. We're just constantly chasing this sense of equilibrium in a system that's built for wild swings.
And this roller coaster, this instability, it comes back to a core philosophical point in the research, doesn't it? Confusing the temporal with the eternal.
Yes, that confusion is pinpointed as the root cause of this suffering.
Okay, let's really break that down. It sounds critical. What does it mean for the constructed self and all its attachments to be temporal?
Temporal simply means related to time. It's temporary, it's conditional, it's subject to change. Think about it. Your job, your body, your reputation, your relationships, even your memories, as we discussed,
Wow.
all these components of the constructed self exist in time. They arise, they shift, they decay, they eventually pass away. None of it is permanent.
Okay, all the stuff we usually identify with. And the eternal, what's that in this framework?
The eternal refers to that which is timeless, constant, unchanging. It's the underlying awareness itself, that silent witnessing presence we talked about. It's independent of circumstances, roles, or stories. It's the unconditioned space in which all the temporal things appear and disappear.
So the suffering comes because we're trying to find that deep, permanent sense of safety and worth, the eternal, by clinging on to things that are, by their very nature, temporary, like our job title or how we look.
Precisely. We're trying to build a permanent house on shifting sand. That fundamental mismatch guarantees disappointment and anxiety because the temporal anchors will inevitably shift or dissolve.
But recognizing that confusion, that's the key to unlocking something else.
It is. Because beneath all that drama, the ups and downs of the constructed self, the book points towards a truth that's actually always available, just usually overlooked. That the one who is aware of the success and the failure, the one who witnesses the pride and the shame, that awareness itself is fundamentally untouched by any of it.
Okay. That's a huge shift. So the me that feels devastated by a critique is the narrative self, the constructed story.
Yes.
But there's a deeper I that simply observes that devastation without being inherently harmed by it. What is that observer?
That observer is pure awareness.
Okay, let's get a really clear definition of pure awareness, because this seems to be the authentic essence the book mentions.
Pure awareness is described as the silent, constant, witnessing presence that underlies everything else, all thoughts, feelings, sensations, experiences. It's not itself a thought or an emotion. It's more like the space in which thoughts and emotions happen.
Like the screen on which the movie plays.
That's a classic analogy, yes. It's the fundamental ground of being. You can't really experience awareness directly as an object because it is the experiencing subject. It's the true self, not something built up over time, but the constant, ever-present foundation.
So if the constructed self is temporal, always changing, living in past memories and future worries,
Then the true self, this pure awareness, is eternal. It's constant across all changes. And crucially, it only exists right now in the immediacy of the present moment. It doesn't live in memory or projection.
and realizing that distinction, that's the core of the spiritual journey described in the research.
That's the essence of it. The whole path of self-mastery is about waking up from this deep hypnosis, this identification with the temporary story, the constructed character, and rediscovering, or maybe just recognizing, this silent, spacious awareness that was never actually lost. It's always here, beneath the noise.
But wait, if we totally disidentify from the story, how do we, function? Pay bills, talk to people, we still need a name, roles. The book isn't saying reject society, is it? It talks about seeing the provisional nature of roles.
Exactly. That's a key clarification. Provisional nature just means temporary, conditional, subject to change. We absolutely need the constructed self as a functional tool. We need it to navigate the world, interact, make plans, raise families. The mistake isn't having roles or a name.
It's believing that's all you are?
Precisely. It's believing the role defines you, rather than being something you temporarily do or express.
The book uses the actor analogy, which I think really helps here.
Yes, it's a perfect illustration. A skilled actor fully inhabits a character on stage. They feel the character's emotions, speak their lines, move like them, deep immersion.
Right.
But off stage, they don't believe they are Hamlet or Lady Macbeth. They know it was a role they played. They shed the character's story, conflicts, triumphs, and return to themselves.
So mastery means learning to play our life roles, employee, parent, friend, whatever, with full presence and commitment, but without getting completely lost in them,
Yeah.
seeing them as expressions, not definitions.
Exactly. When you see the role as an expression of the deeper awareness, rather than the definition of who you are, it loses its power to bind you. It creates incredible psychological freedom.
Yeah, because if you lose your job, using that example, you haven't lost yourself. You've just stopped playing that particular role. The actor is still there.
Precisely. The awareness remains untouched.
Okay, so if the problem is this deep identification with the story, the solution involves
Mm.
letting go,
Mm.
detaching. Where does that path to self-mastery actually start in practical terms?
Practically, it begins the moment we stop fiercely defending the ego's story.
Stop defending it.
Yes, the ego's prime directive is self-preservation, right? So it perceives any challenge to its story, any threat to its coherence, any hint of change as a threat of annihilation. It fights back.
Oh yeah, you see that all the time. People doubling down on beliefs even when evidence contradicts them. Or staying in bad situations because the known misery feels safer than the unknown alternative.
That's the ego fearing dissolution. It mistakes the death of its story for the death of itself. It's the tragedy of confusing the temporal mask with the eternal face.
But the research offers hope here. It says dissolution isn't destruction.
It offers tremendous hope. It frames the dissolution of the false constructed identity not as annihilation, but as revelation. What actually dies is just the belief system, the belief that you were limited to that specific name, history, or set of characteristics. What gets revealed is the underlying presence, which needs no defense because it's inherently whole.
So the path isn't about building a better ego or adding more spiritual labels to the story.
No, not fundamentally. The path outlined is one of inquiry and observation.
Inquiry and observation. Tell us more.
It means becoming really curious, almost like a scientist, about the machinery of your own constructed self. Watching, neutrally, how it operates, noticing the thoughts, the feelings, the defenses as they arise, without immediately buying into them or judging them.
So when a thought like, I'm not good enough comes up,
Instead of automatically believing it or fighting it, you just notice it. Ah, there's the not good enough story again. You see it as a mental event, a pattern, rather than absolute truth. You recognize that every time you say, I am this or I am that, you're drawing a boundary, defining a limit.
and the inquiry part, asking questions.
Yes. The inquiry gently shifts the focus. Instead of getting lost in the content of the thought, am I really not good enough? You ask about the context. Who is aware of this thought? Who is the I that claims to be not good enough? Or even, as the book suggests, the radical inquiry. What happens if, just for this moment, I don't define myself at all?
What does happen?
Well, often when you rest in that open questioning, the emotional charge starts to fade. The desperate need to label and define yourself loosens its grip. The identification weakens.
And something else emerges.
Yes. What emerges is often described as that spacious, quiet presence we talked about. Peace, clarity. It's not something you achieve. It's what's already there when the frantic storytelling quiets down. It's the natural state of pure awareness.
Which brings us back to that final core insight. The constructed self is just a tool. It's not the ultimate truth of who you are.
Exactly. A necessary, useful instrument for navigating the world of time, form, and interaction.
But the suffering happens when the tool thinks it's the master. When the instrument forgets the musician playing it.
Perfectly put. The guitar is essential for the music, but it's not the musician. The rediscovery of the true self, therefore, isn't about adding anything. It's a path of subtraction.
Subtraction. Yes.
Gently, patiently letting go, releasing the attachment to every concept, every label, every role, every story that obscures the simple awareness that was here before the story began and will be here after it ends.
Wow. That's so counterintuitive to how we usually think about self-improvement, adding skills, adding knowledge, of becoming more. This is about becoming less defined.
Less defined, yes. You gain everything by releasing the need to be a specific something. As the book beautifully states, when the story quiets, being shines. The self you were searching for wasn't lost or broken.
It was just hidden, misperceived behind the noise of its own narrative.
Exactly. Mistaken for the story it was telling itself.
What an incredibly detailed journey through the ideas in The Foundations of Angel Wing, volume #1. Just to recap the big takeaways for everyone listening. This constructed self we experience is, well, an adaptive tool. It's necessary for life, but it's temporary, it's built on shifting memories, and it's ultimately a flawed definition of who we really are.
And the path to freedom, to stability, isn't about endlessly polishing that constructed story or trying to build a better one. It's found in learning to observe the story impartially, understanding its temporary nature, seeing how memory shapes it, and recognizing the constant, unchanging awareness that witnesses the whole show without getting caught in it.
And knowing this understanding of the mechanism, it's incredibly practical. It's your shortcut. It gives you the blueprint for how your own mind, your own mental schema is filtering your reality right now, creating feelings of worth or lack, fear or confidence. And crucially, you now know that filter isn't fixed. It's just a structure you can become aware of and gradually disengage from.
Yes. And perhaps, to leave you with a final thought to really sit with, drawing directly from the profound insights in this technical research. If your identity truly is this fluid narrative, this constructed story, and if you now understand that the constructed self is just the main character, what amazing, expansive, unwritten chapter might you allow yourself to create next, knowing deep down that the author is infinitely greater than the character?